So, ever since I was little, I'd probably say around 5 or 6, I always used to experience sleep paralysis in my old house. I describe my experience as somewhat normal, but one thing always used to happen that I'd never heard of. Obviously, the typical dark figure at the end of my bed and a heavy feeling in my chest were there, but I would always feel as though someone was punching my back really aggressively and would get the image of what I describe as a bear, but it wasn't actually a bear, if you get what I mean. This would happen almost every night until I was 11, and I just assumed this was normal. As a little side story, the night of my great-grandmother's funeral, when I was like 9 or 10, I saw her standing near my window smiling at me. I remember trying to talk to her, asking why she was there because she was meant to be dead, obviously not understanding that if what I was seeing was real, she would be a ghost. I got out of bed and went to walk to her, and her face dropped, her eyes were wide, and she looked terrified. Out of nowhere, her face lost the appearance of skin and turned into basically just the skull, and she screamed, "Get out." Looking back now, I don't believe that was my great-grandma's spirit. I believe it was the man I'm going to tell you about. Around 6 months ago, my mom, brother, and I were talking before we went to bed about ghosts and the paranormal, as we had just finished rewatching Paranormal Activity. I told her about having sleep paralysis in my bedroom every night, and I remember her just saying, "You're joking, right?" And I was like, "No, why would I be joking?" She then went on to tell me about how when we were moving out of that house in 2014 and we were packing our belongings, she went into the crawl space in her attic bedroom and found these old newspapers and ownership records from a man who owned the house in the 1900s who died. We don't know if he died at home or whether he died elsewhere, but we believe he was the spirit I was experiencing. The reason we came to this conclusion was because my mom's bedroom wasn't a bedroom at the time. Her friend, who she bought the house from, had just converted it, and mine and my brother's bedrooms were one big bedroom. I believe he was angry that we were there because he still saw it as his house, although I could be wrong. Anyway, after we moved into our current house, in 2014, I didn't experience anything for a good few years. Jump forward to 2017. My best friend at the time was over, and we were baking for a bake sale we were doing for school. She had gone to the toilet, but when she came back to the kitchen, she told me she'd seen an old man at the bottom of my stairs and described him. He had a blue check button-up shirt tucked into formal black trousers, he was bald, he wore rectangle-framed glasses, and he had a sort of a round belly. I just assumed she was trying to freak me out, as I had recently told her about my sleep paralysis in the old house. Going perhaps another month into the future, another close friend of mine was at my house. It's important to note that my best friend had never met this other friend of mine, and again, she had gone to the toilet and said she saw a man at the bottom of the stairs. I wish I was joking when I say she described him exactly the same, except for their wording. In the summer of the same year, 2017, my best friend of 11 years at the time, now 14 years, who actually moved into my old house, traveled 2 hours to stay at my house for a whole week. One night, she shook me awake, saying, "Stop, you're freaking me out." When I was awake, I was very confused, and asked what she meant. She told me that I was saying, "No, you're not supposed to be here. I left like you wanted." This could be a coincidence because she was there and it reminded me of my old house, but I just think it's a bit weird when my other friends say they saw the same man in my house a month or so prior. Jump forward to 2019 in the present day, and I have had some unexplainable experiences that could be put down to coincidence, but I thought I'd add them here. First of all, I used to have this desk chair in my room that my cat loved to sleep on. She literally claimed that as her spot, and one day she sat on the opposite end of my room and just hissed and hissed at the chair. Me being like, "There's nothing there, don't worry," I picked her up and tried to put her on the chair and settle her, but she literally clung to my shoulder and wouldn't stop meowing until I put her down and opened my door for her. Another thing is that a couple of months ago, I experienced what I think was sleep paralysis again. I was face down in my pillow and couldn't move when I woke up and felt like I was actually going to die. I literally couldn't breathe. It freaked me out so much that I make it my point to lay on my side rather than my stomach. The last thing that comes to mind was literally last week. My brother was at work and he left his bedroom door open. I don't like my cat going in there as he gets himself stuck under his bed, so I shut his door and I went downstairs and sat in the living room with my mom for a good half an hour. When I came back upstairs, his door was wide open, but it kept swinging back and forth. Jokingly, I said, "Haha, very funny, Jeremy, please shut the door," and I kid you not, the door slammed shut. Component of the story. These stories about my stepson were related to me by my husband. I believe my stepson as a child was sensitive to ghosts, the paranormal, etc. An incident happened when my stepson was a baby at another haunted apartment where he woke up in the middle of the night crying like he was hurt in his crib. My husband and I noticed 3 scratches on his back. Of course, can be explained, yet my husband insisted those scratches were not there before putting him to sleep. Another strange phenomenon is that almost every photo of my stepson had some orb near him. Of course, can be explained, yet there were photos of just his foot in the background and a well-placed orb near his foot. No matter the location of the photo, 90% of the photos we had of him had this weird orb. A month or so passed from this incident. My two stepkids, 7 and 8 at the time, would come one day a week and on some weekends. Their room was relatively unused. I started hearing their sliding wood closet doors knock and a strange rotten egg smell coming from their room. I searched high and low for the source of the smell but never found anything. My mother-in-law had stayed over a few times and would tease that the kids must have left an egg salad sandwich somewhere. My husband heard the knocking at some point yet chalked it up to the air conditioning kicking on. One weekend my husband was out of town for work and I was alone with all the kids. I had got them all to sleep and decided to stay up and watch Ghost Adventures. I was laying on the couch when I happened to look up and see my stepson standing by the couch with his eyes closed. Immediately realized he was sleepwalking, which happened from time to time. He started mumbling about an old scary man in his closet. I stupidly figured he was having a nightmare and guided him back to his bed. As I started to walk out of the room, my stepson sat up in bed and mumbled again, "The old man in the closet is looking at me." Looked over to see the closet open and instantly got creeped out. Then my stepson said, "He's going to knock." Then 3 quick knocks happened. Immediately the smell of rotten eggs got heavy in the room. I flicked the lights on and guided my stepson to my bedroom. I was freaking out internally because my stepdaughter was on the top bunk in that room sleeping and I did not want to leave her alone. I got all kids into my bed and stayed up until I no longer could fight sleep. I'm not super religious but asked my mother for advice on what to do. She said to pray over the rooms and get oil on my fingers and place crosses over each door frame. I did exactly what she told me. That night I had a terrible nightmare that my mom was possessed. In the nightmare, she had died a gruesome death that I was made to watch. Woke up hysterically crying. I wanted nothing more to just be able to move, but it was not an option. After this, the activity in the apartment calmed. Yet, one new thing started happening. One night I woke up to my bed shaking. It felt as though someone had placed their knees against our mattress and was shaking it. As soon as I tried to wake up my husband to see if he felt it, it would immediately stop. This would happen weekly. For context, my 1-year-old son slept in a toddler bed in front of our bed. One night my 1-year-old and I were up in the living room. My husband went to bed early as he had to go to work early the next day. He came out looking upset and said to stop allowing our 1-year-old to come in the room because he was shaking the bed. I told him our son never went into the room. As soon as I finished that sentence, the glass cover of the entryway light, which was right behind me, came crashing down. My husband stood there sleepily trying to process everything. He finally was feeling and seeing the things I had been dealing with. One day a house nearby was for rent and we moved out. We were at this apartment for less than a year. We never experienced anything like what we experienced in that apartment. Relief, because I was worried that whatever was in this place might attach itself to us. My stepson passed away in 2019 due to possible COVID. I had told him the story before his passing when he was in his teens and he claimed to not remember the incident in the apartment. I believe fully he saw whatever entity was in that apartment.
So I live in Illinois and one of the few houses I've lived in my town, Forreston, has been haunted. I remember as a kid growing up and the doors upstairs would open and close by themselves. You would hear footsteps in the hallway and attic. A lot of my friends' houses were haunted too, but that's not what the story is about, so this is where it gets crazy. My friend lived by parts of an old train car, tracks, signs, etc. behind this old creepy house that no one lived in for the longest time. Forreston was known for being a train stop back in the early 1900s. Well, here's where it all began. My friend who lived there and another one of our friends would hang out there every day, and the door to his room would randomly open either really slow or fast. Outside his room by the front door, his dog would sit all day while they lived there and stare at the corner of the wall toward the ceiling and bark. One day my friend who lived there was gone with his family and it was on my birthday. His mom asked if I could watch the house for 2 days and told me I was able to invite a few people over. Well, my other friend I mentioned earlier came over like always along with 4 other people. We chilled and played video games. Eventually they all left and it was just me and one friend. We were playing Madden on the PS3 and all of a sudden I hear, "Will you play with me?" I thought it was my friend and told him that we were already playing. He then asked, "What do you mean?" I didn't say anything, and I was confused. I hear it again, "Will you play with me?" I looked at my friend and he says he didn't say anything again when I asked what he said. We continue playing when a few minutes later we both hear it and look at each other confused. He said he heard it that time and we sat there, paused the game, and heard it again, and again about 10 times. I walk over to the toy box that was by the TV and in front of it there sat a toy cash register. When I found out that's what it was, I picked it up and it repeated over and over again, "Will you play with me?" I opened the back and there were no batteries. We freaked out. I took it and as I walked to the garage through the house, the room felt cold and the register felt cold. I left it in the garage and closed the door and went back to the living room. We didn't hear it when about 5 minutes later from 2 rooms away in the garage we hear a super loud scream saying, "Will you play with me?" We looked at each other, got up, and cleaned everything up because we wanted to leave. When we were putting on our shoes the front door opened in front of us and a gust of cold air brushed by us. It was crazy. About a week later we were in his room and it was 12:00 a.m. We were chilling when the door opened. We closed the door 3 different times and the third time the door flew open it hit the wall hard. As we were getting ready to leave the front door flew open my friend looked at me and we ran outside, and I didn't go back for a few days. Later on, my friend's little brother said he had a ghost friend named Tyler who died on a train when he was 5. It's so weird how his brother was only 6 and said Tyler and Tyler's mom would come to visit at night and sleep in his bed with him. He never saw the train or knew about the neighbor's haunted house.
If you have any stories you'd like to be featured for future videos, be sure to email us at shadowbuddytv@gmail.com.